to bring you this song, your song.
Bartail has been one of the persons who's watched all the shows. I talk to him on a regular basis in the EverQuest Next IRC channel.
What we saw with, Kunark for EQ2, you did those 400 quests, you did all the content, and at the end of it, the world wasn't changed.
Yeah, I'm Phantom X. I do social media and write articles for EQ Nexus.
For the Fall of Bastion, it was a very definite, okay, this is where your story is going to fit into the world.
Listen, fluffy looking bear. Thank you. Listen, I went and I killed a dragon, and then 2 drops of whiskey hit my face, and I willed this manly beard into cow was raising. Yes, fluffy looking bear. Thank you. Listen, I went and I killed a dragon, and then 2 drops of whiskey hit my face, and I willed this manly beard into cow was raising. Yes, fluffy looking bear. Thank you. Listen, I went and I killed a dragon.
Hello and welcome to EverCast episode number 73. I thought it was. I think it's mislabeled on the Twitch right now because I think it's number 73, the social side of MMOs part 2, where we talk about the non-combat side of MMO gameplay. I am one of your normal weekly regular hosts, Tanlin. With me are 2 of our other regular weekly normal hosts, Kailas and Flatus. Along with us, and one of the reasons why we were a little bit delayed, is Hans. His Twitter handle is @HansShotFirst. He's a friend of Kyleston and mine. He raids with us in Warcraft, but we brought him on because, well, I'll let him explain it, because I had to even look up what a CSM?
Yes, CSM.
Customer Service Manager.
No, but sure. Yeah, so the CSM is the Council for Stellar Management. It's a title that sounds a little fancier than it actually is, but it's still an important mission. It's from the game EVE Online, and basically what happens is once a year, everybody that plays the game gets a chance to vote, and you vote for a player council of 14 players, and the player council signs an NDA and gets to work with CCP, the company that makes EVE Online, behind the scenes, and essentially work on the game sort of ahead of schedule, ahead of what the public knows. You get kind of built into the Scrum process and get a chance to see all the designs before they're released, and as well as take a bunch of player feedback from the community and just be a part of the development process in this really plugged in, interesting way that not a lot of publishers out there do. It's kind of catching on using players injected into the process this way, but the CSM is kind of one of the best examples out there of it. So I spent a year on the CSM, and then after that, CCP Games invited me to spend a year starting up its counterpart, the Council of Planetary Management, which is a similar institution, but for their MMO FPS called Dust 514. That's a PlayStation 3 game. So I've spent a few years now working with CCP Games and the communities for those games as a representative. So that's kind of my background.
Well, that's quite the mouthful. So what's funny is that in last week's conversation that we were having, Kylest pointed out that, like, oh, Talon, if you love EVE Online so much, why don't you go play it? Because I'm a big fan of everything about EVE except the combat, which makes it almost the perfect MMO to talk about when we're talking about the non-combat types of social gameplay that are available.
Oh, absolutely. And I totally understand people's aversions to the actual gameplay itself. The game is very, very tedious. There's nothing like it in terms of depth or the amount of stuff that you can do in the universe. But as far as the actual moment-to-moment combat, it's often a lot slower paced and not what a lot of people are expecting. And there is a lot of setup time to kind of get your fleet together and go out and find engagements and and some of the tedium that's involved there and has turned a lot of people off to the game. So that's some criticism that I'm well familiar with and totally understand. I'm not actually playing a lot of EVE Online at the moment. I'm kind of taking a break and soaking in a lot of the other games that I didn't get as much of a chance to play in the last couple of years. But I hear you there.
Yeah. All right. So before we jump further down the main topic, we have a little bit of ECast news to discuss. This is just where we talk about what's going on in the world of online gaming and sometimes what's going on with us. I apologize again that we took last week off. My throat. I do not recommend anybody ever getting a severe case of laryngitis, because you think that you're recovering, your voice is back, but then there are days when I'm like, my voice is cracking all the time. Today happens to be another one of those days where I'm like, oh, I hope I make it through the whole show. But yesterday was great. Today, not so good. And then one of our other regular weekly normal hosts, Luci, she just finished moving and she's working on getting her cable internet up to being able to handle being on the internet doing live stream games and podcasts. So as soon as she gets that worked out, she will be rejoining on us. She's not off for good. She's just temporarily, dealing with the real life stuff of moving that everybody I hear loves. And then there was one other thing, but I forget it. A schedule. We have a schedule. That's kind of what this was all about, like us missing a show. Of course, this week we're talking about the social side of MMOs Part 2. Next week, and I tweeted out the start of the conversation that I wanted to start, is storytelling through scenery. And that is like, I was playing Guild Wars 2. I ran by a ruined castle and I thought to myself, what happened to that castle? Why is it ruined? And it got my curiosity thinking about how we can tell, how developers can tell a story about their world without having to tell us anything. They can just show it to us. And so we'll do a whole episode on that and talk about storytelling through scenery. And then the following week after that is October 25th. It is the weekend before Halloween, and so we thought we would do the Tales of Halloween, where we look into all of the different fantasy MMOs that have Halloween holiday events and talk about, like, how do they rebrand the Halloween holiday to fit in with their game world. And so we think that would be pretty cool. Then the weekend after that is November 1st. We haven't quite exactly picked out what the topic will be, but the weekend after that is November 8th. And that is the weekend after BlizzCon, where we will be coming, well, Kylust and I will be coming directly from BlizzCon. I think that we're in the hotel on Sunday morning, right? So we'll be driving back that night and getting ready for the podcast. We're hoping to hear a lot of news about the Legion expansion for Warcraft, Overwatch, their Blizzard's FPS shooter. We're hoping to hear a lot of news from. And then, of course, it will be the first tournament for Heroes of the Storm, and their second tournament for Hearthstone, and maybe Diablo 3. Who knows?
I'm very, very jealous of you guys. That sounds so much fun.
There is going to be so much screaming on my part. Yeah. Oh my god.
Guess what?
I'm still waiting for them to be like, Legion is open for pre-order. Where's my credit cards? Now.
Not that I forgot to tell you, but I found out that those sweet messenger bags that you're getting, that you may have a spare one that you could send me, wink. That in that messenger bag, you're also getting a code for the BlizzCon virtual ticket. So if you would be kind enough to give me one, I could watch BlizzCon from home that weekend.
Bless.
And hi.
You ruined my surprise, but I was sending you all of it.
Oh. You didn't. Well, technically, I didn't know that till you just said, "Hey, I'm sending you." But yeah, ha, nerds, I get
back. So, and then we have some ideas how we want to fill out the rest of November. And as soon as we have those finalized, we'll get that out to you, because we want we want to know what we're talking about so that we can prepare for it. We think that we deliver a better presentation to you guys when we do it that way. And then, of course, we want to get prepared for the holidays so that we can take it off. I don't know.
Take it off.
So, other news that we have, the Guild Wars 2 expansion is 2 weeks away. That is the Heart of Thrones expansion. Currently, the game has gone free to play. I believe that even after the expansion launches, the core game is going to remain free to play, which means that to level through the beginning levels and everything like that, you don't actually have to purchase the game or the expansion. Of course, there's going to be some things that are blocked off to you. I know that even right now, if you play Guild Wars 2, you can't get into World versus World until you get to level 60. And if you have a paid account, a bot account, you can jump in at level 1 if you want to. And this is just a segue into, I am having so much fun in World versus World now that I have a group that I'm running with 2 nights a week. I'm just going to throw out there that the group that I'm running with is Team Legacy. They are actually the group that kind of got me into doing the live cast, podcasting in general, doing their Tales of Tyria, which is probably going on right now. But they're doing an open recruitment. If you are interested in anything Guild Wars 2, get a hold of me after, whenever. And I will try and hook you up with a group of people so that you don't have to play alone, because MMOs are supposed to be social. We're supposed to be playing games with our friends. So, Flatus, I'm going to turn it over to you on this next point. Let me know if you need a little, reminder.
Probably. Are we talking about the thing that we talked about
The
before?
giveaway?
That thing? Yeah. Well, all right.
You tweeted it out.
Two things. I did a little bit. Two things. All right, two things. We are doing a giveaway tonight, and one of the giveaways that we are doing tonight is a beta code for Gigantic, which is this new MOBA. I don't know if you guys checked it out. It is gorgeous. It is a very gorgeous game. I am in the beta. I can't talk about it because they are under NDA. I will explain it like this. The guys who went to create the company that created Gigantic hail from Blizzard. There is an art detail to it. The game is gorgeous. There's this level of, I feel like it's almost a Blizzard game. So if you're not in that game, you're not trying it out, you're not playing it, this is your chance to get into that beta. So one of you lucky people tonight is going to get that. On that, giveaways, we would like to do more. There are some legal issues we have to look at with states and that we're in giving stuff away.
Right. Like for one, we know we can't do raffles. Obviously, we're looking into what type of we can't ask you to buy anything, and we get that. But then we want to make sure that we're not breaking any laws.
Yeah.
Even though it could be fun.
Yeah, the thing is, ultimately, none of us want to get the channel shut down. None of us really want to, have to go to court. So we should be okay with certain things. But if any of you out there have experience with doing a lot of giveaways, let us know. You can email us at contact@evercastshow.com. That's right. Got that taken care of already.
Yeah, because we have our own website and stuff.
That's right, we do. Also, if you know anybody, if you're in the Gigantic beta right now and you know a friend and you have no codes to give and you have a friend and they're just kind of doing nothing right now, maybe I'm going to tell them to hop in the chat. That brings me on to my other thing. It's not on notes, so I'm going to just give... Talon's going to be okay with it, though. Yet again, we do not ask for any money from you guys. We pride ourselves on making sure that we deliver content at the best and highest point that we could possibly give you. And in return, what we ask is that you share this with a friend. Family member, anybody who loves MMOs, gaming, online gaming, that you think that may be interested in listening to EverCast. If you share it with one person and they share, not like a pyramid scheme because no one's transferring money, but if you would share that and share us out and tell them to find us on iTunes, find us on Stitcher, on the internet, evercastshow.com, just share us. The more that people find us and listen to us, the better off we are in the end, because the higher our numbers are, and the more that we go, the less that I have to talk about. So, but yes, go Stitcher if you have that. It's an app. Go download it. Listen to Stitcher. Thumbs up. That helps. We bump up in numbers. More people find us. Same on iTunes. Give us a review. More 5-star reviews, the better. More people find us. If you don't like us and you don't think we're doing great, leave us a 1-star. I really don't care, but tell us that what we're doing wrong so we can fix it. I'll read them. So,
which is an awesome.
I will too.
Yeah. Speaking. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, make sure we get to talk about what we've been doing lately, but you guys plugging the show. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Oh, we've been doing a lot of things lately.
Bring chicken, bring cow.
One of the things we're talking about feedback to the show, and we do read all of it. One of the comments that we got from last week's show is quote, sadly, it's hard to find others who are the same way. That is, most people are too focused on progression. They find it hard to wait and take in the story, which, as Kylus was saying last week, inevitably leads to me playing the game solo so that I can go at my own pace rather than rush to endgame. Is basically the remark that was agreeing with what Kylus was saying. And I totally get it. Because when I rush through a game, it's because I'm trying to get to a point where I can do more things with more people. And I hate the feeling that I have to rush. I wish that there was a gameplay model which was like, take your time and go at your own pace, because you can do anything in the game right now as you are.
Nobody ever agrees with me. Thank you, user.
I was looking for the name.
Yeah, because you didn't say it. It was like,
Well, it's from YouTube, and I always worry about mispronouncing names, right? So it's either Tigergola or Tigergola. I don't know.
I can understand where Kylest is coming from. Like when a new Warcraft expansion comes out, I would much rather. I like to be on when other people are around to chat with, maybe perhaps, or ask questions if there's a problem with a quest. But like as far as doing the actual quests themselves, I'd rather be by myself. I'm not like joining a party where we have to stop and wait for this person to do this thing or all stick together. Like I'd rather be on my own leveling. So I can understand that.
Do social media.
Yep.
And write articles for EQ Nexus.
I find that what I do is I have to get the game twice through. Like the first time I rush through it as fast as I can to get to max level so I can start doing the max level stuff that's in the game. And then I'll level and alt through the content and kind of go at my own pace and enjoy the story.
Fluffy looking bear. Thank you.
And that sucks because I'm basically having to do it twice. And on the other hand, there's like, and that's one of my complaints about having, well, I totally understand that arena.net wants you to buy their game. But to block World versus World from free-to-play players, until they get to level 60, they can on a free account, they can play at level 60. But I love the idea of being like level 40 and running around. It's laying siege to a castle with a group of people in comms, having a good time, laughing at people when they like fall off a cliff and fall to their death. You know, they get
Didn't
one
you
shot.
do that recently?
Yeah, oh yeah, we do it all the time in Guild Wars 2. That's the cliff boss. And then I also you know, we kind of joke around with one another when you know somebody gets taken out by a catapult blast because they didn't get out of the way of the falling, you know, the flying rock at them. And then we high five each other when we do an epic kill or take over a tower. And I love the idea that you can play it without having to reach max level. EverQuest next.
I didn't like the game.
I'm sorry that we were.
I'm a big fan of Guild Wars too. I haven't gotten into World PvP, but I'm gonna have Tanlin here teach me some in the coming weeks.
I tried. I just couldn't do it. But upside is I don't have to play that game because I play a game where I don't have to level through the story again. I just can do it on one job. Thank you, Final Fantasy. Woo!
Well, we'll do it. We need to come back to how having one character be able to do all things is not the same as not having any alts. But that's not
true. You're absolutely right.
That's not for the show because that's for another one. All right, Kylas wants to talk about a little bit about what she was doing, and then we will jump into the main topic.
Makes it seem like I'm the only one that wants to be like, hey, this is what I've been doing lately.
I've been working. I'm bored. Boring. Not bored. Boring.
You've been playing Guild Wars 2 like 2 or 3 nights a week. What do you mean you haven't
I don't
been
want
doing
to. I don't
anything?
want to plug it too hard, but yeah, it's a lot of fun right now.
I'll plug the crap out of Final Fantasy 14. Listen, I'm playing after the show. You want to come play with me? Go log in Final Fantasy 14 Fanfrit server. Come join us.
Yeah, you'll play with me when we're done. Yeah.
Yeah. Just gotta grab a snack and a drink, but yeah, we're down.
But okay, so I've been playing like Final Fantasy, obviously, and Hearthstone. I kind of got like re-addicted to Hearthstone again. It's like my new crack. Somebody stop me.
How many card packs did you buy for the new one?
We can't talk about that. I might have blown most of my paycheck on those.
Oh man.
I think I bought like a 7-pack. That's it. It's okay. But yeah. I genuinely want to get like competitive. Like I want to play at Con next year. I'm not talking about like, oh, I want to go sit at BlizzCon and play on their computers. No, I want to go whip somebody else's ass and like get prize. Oh, fuck the prize money. I don't care about the prize money. I want the glory.
Go for it. It's fun. I like that they added rewards for ranked mode now, so that there's actually like incentive to push yourself from season to season and see how high you can get. That was a big complaint of mine before, is I wasn't getting any extra reward for it, and so until you've played enough to where you have literally every card, I would much rather just be doing arena over and over and over again, get those extra packs if I go on a good streak, rather than just get some arbitrary rank. But now that there's rewards regardless of the activity, it's a lot of fun.
I do not enjoy the arena in it, but I should probably try it anyways again. But I've been playing ranked and I'm not good. But I'm good enough to get a reward. I'm just not that good.
Yet.
Do you want to be my manager, babe?
Sure.
Okay, that was all. That's all. I want to blow things up. Hearthstone. Leroy Jenkins' favorite card. You summon him. You summon him. Leroy Jenkins.
All right.
It's amazing. He dies. At least I had chicken.
That's one. I think that's one of the part of their success with that damn game is those little like Leroy Jenkins was just a thing that happened. He's actually in the game now as part of the cards. Those little things. It's the little things. Good job.
He dies
Blizzard.
to whelps every time in that game.
Mm-hmm.
As it should be. All right, so
okay.
Moving on to the social side of gaming, part 2, the non-combat part. And I'm having a difficult time trying to frame this because it's like, why do we play games? Games have rules, they have challenges that we overcome, right? And they have rules that we must follow in overcoming the challenge. So it's this weird kind of like, well, how do we challenge ourselves? Combat is the easy one, where we're physically or fighting with one another. How do we create a compelling experience for players without those same sort of easy to go to combat mechanics? And we think that we found a few. We got top 4 main ones that we're going to go over. The first one is probably the easiest because in almost every game it has industry and commerce. The idea that you get to make something, that thing that you made is valuable to you or it is valuable to someone else. And then in some games, there is a bit of a challenge delivering that thing that you created to someone else.
Which is, that's metagaming sometimes, but we'll get there. I have thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, and I'm gonna go to Hans first because I know that EVE Online has probably the deepest industry and commerce system of any MMO. That's all that people do. Not all people, but some people. That's what they do when they log in. They go on mining ops and they mine in the raw materials that people need to build those huge capital ships, maintain their sovereign space with the materials that they farm up. And then there's other people who build those things. And then because EVE Online has a pseudo realistic approach, that when you sell something, it doesn't magically appear in their bag or in their mailbox over in that other side of the galaxy. Somebody has to transport it there, or the person who bought it has to come to where you sold it to pick it up. And that's where we get into that whole idea of commerce, not just the industry part of it, but the commercial aspect of it, where some things might be more valuable in one part of the galaxy than in another galaxy, and you can make a living just hauling in stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is for sure one of EVE's great strengths, is the fact that literally everything in the game starts with a mineral. I mean, the bottom of the food chain is right. I don't want to say bottom of the food chain to be like derogatory towards miners or anything before I get any angry emails, but there are mining fleets that go out and go through the asteroid belts and shoot lasers at rocks and collect ore, and that's where everything begins. And without that ore, nothing gets built, nothing gets made, nobody has any fun. And so this ore gets processed into metals, which get then added as ingredients and built into ships. And every single one of these is its own profession with its own skill set in the game. And what you have are players that specialize. There's some players that do it all, but certainly players gravitate towards different steps in this whole process, from material harvesting to research and the science and the manufacturing end of the ships, to transport, like you said, to sales in the market. And you mentioned already something that's really interesting, which is the goods, the way the goods have to be transported around. So in EVE itself, EVE is one universe. It's one, I guess you would say, one shard. To compare it to other MMOs, you don't have different servers necessarily. What you have are different planetary systems that you can jump around to, and each one of those planetary systems has planets, and around those planets are space stations, and that's where everything gets bought and sold. But you can only buy and sell from a station that you're actually physically at. And so everything that is spread throughout the galaxy is out there because
I don't have your guys' video.
Everything sounds great. There's just no
Let me try that.
It might be back up. We'll see. Well,
Hi.
Not dropping any frames anymore. Hey, what's up?
Noisy
So
gamer in
I
chat.
don't know if any of that got through. Hopefully.
Noisy gamer in chat. If this were EVE, we call that a time dilation.
Yeah, time dilation is kind of weird. All right, so
I apologize if I'm being really quiet during this particular conversation. I've never played EVE. It's totally not my thing. I watched him play it. I watched friends in college play it, and it's like, holy shit, this game is gorgeous. I'll never play this. It's pretty, but I'll never play this. Apologies.
No, that's totally fine. And one of the interesting things that I think CCP is really savvy of this, the company that makes EVE. I think they've really caught on to the fact that they know that their game itself is not for everybody. The gameplay itself is not for everybody. There's a cost to having that level of depth, and that's accessibility. And it's not a very accessible game or fun game to a lot of people. But because of the stories and the like crazy things that you can do in the universe, because those are often more interesting than the gameplay itself. The company has actually started to capitalize that and find other mediums that they can express those stories. They've started putting out some comic books and They're also working with an author that's doing like almost like a novelization of some of the great wars that have been in Eve, in order to create content where people can follow along with the things that happen in the Eve universe that are all completely player driven, and read them and engage in them like science fiction without actually having to play the game itself. And I don't think that's necessarily a knock against the game. I just think that's an acknowledgement that that's, the kind of universe that they've created, and they're just trying to find more ways for people to plug into it. The other games, the first person shooter Dust 514 and the VR game that they're working on for the Oculus Rift called Eve Valkyrie, those are two other much more action based games that'll plug into the universe that are attempts to get around the fact that they know that their core game isn't for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so this is where like now maybe I'll get hate mail. My first experience with EVE Online was actually doing mining ops and being a miner, turning big rocks into smaller rocks. And we're talking about the social parts of it. And I talk about before, like all the time, that I play MMOs with my dad all the time. I'm not currently, well, no, even currently, he still logs into WoW and plays with us every once in a while. But one of the things is that, he is not like a high speed, high twitch type of game player, and he never will be. You get 60 years old and you just can't keep up with kids anymore. So one of the things that I liked about the speed of EVE Online, especially when it came to mining, is that, it's a very play at your own pace type of thing, so that he would basically, I had the miner and I was turning big rocks into small rocks. He was a hauler and he would haul the ore that I had crushed up, and he would haul it to a station so that we could process it and sell it later. And we talked about like forced downtime in our last episode and how we kind of hated that idea of forced game time. Or not game, forced downtime. But I think that in some MMOs, especially when it comes to like industry and commerce, that games can do well in slowing down the pace of the game, so that you're waiting for the next step or the next process to complete before you move on to the next one.
Yeah, and mining in Eve, what I think I've found out over the years is like, it's really not about the actual act of mining itself. Mining itself is boring. You fly your ship out to a rock, you click on it, you hit a button, and you orbit that rock for like 10 or 15 minutes while your ore fills up, your hold fills up, and then you jettison it or you fly back to the station, and that's it. And then you go back and do the same. Like, there's no interest to it, in compared to something like combat. But what it becomes is this group social activity where the most efficient way to mine large amounts of ore across a large asteroid field, you learn to chain up different techniques where you outfit your ship more for drilling capacity rather than storage, and you have haulers and you set up logistics chains, and the actual act of sort of finding the most efficient way to go about doing it, and just like sitting around, like most miners will admit, they're sitting around with, on comms with 5 or 6 of their buddies, all drinking beers, telling stories about something else, the way that sailors do, like it's not as much about the activity in the game as it is about the opportunity to get some friends together, and you can play another game on the side while you're mining. You can do other stuff but still be accomplishing something in the Eve universe, and I think that's the appeal.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give it a minute to Flatus. What type of industry and commerce are available in like games like Final Fantasy? Is it the traditional like auction house, crafting system?
Yes. But the crafting system in Final Fantasy isn't like Warcraft crafting, where it's click a button, because you can lose material in that game. So there is buttons you hit and you level up, because you level up crafters as a job. It's like a class in the game. So you go from 1 to 60. So it's not like something that it's just a skill you get and you just do it on your own. You actually wear crafting gear. There's better crafting gear you can apply. There's epic crafting gear that you can wear, and that all helps craft items. There's weapons and stuff you can make for houses, and you can all sell that on the auction house. And really what you do is you rent a retainer, which is a person in game that holds your stuff, and you put them out on the auction house, and people can buy stuff Actually, you can do two things. There's an auction house and there's retainers, and people can purchase stuff off your retainer, which is an in-game NPC that stands there, and people can go up there and buy your wares off your retainer while you go out and adventure, and come back and you'll pick up the gold from them.
How much inner because you can level up all crafting professions all at once. Can you equip all those professions at the same time? Can you be completely independent of other people? Right. So there is like when you're crafting in Final Fantasy, there is the need to rely on other crafters besides yourself. You can't just do it all by yourself.
Yeah, it's a pain. You can level them up. Like some people just level them up, just haven't leveled just for the purpose of leveling. But if you want to get really good, you're gonna concentrate on one, maybe two things, and then you're going to have to rely on other people in your guild or other people in the world, and you're going to trade with them, even trade skills, because there's crafting, the nodes that drop rare items, and those, when you want the really good stuff, you're going to have to farm, and if you're going to farm, you're going to have to deal with a miner, and you may not have leveled mining, and you're like, alright, well, you need that pickaxe, well, if you can go out and gather these goods for me, or if you already have that ore, listen, I'm willing to make you the next tier axe you need if you can, like, and that stuff does happen in Final Fantasy.
So could you? All right, get ready to take a drink. Vanguard had crafting guilds, right? Because you could only be. She's rolling her eyes and sighing deep. Because no one character could be all things, and you had to rely on other crafters to produce materials for you to make a thing, right? So if you were creating a sword, right, and you wanted to make an epic, awesome sword of whatever, and you wanted to make it that way, you had to get a jeweler to cut a jewel and basically you affix a jewel into the pommel, and it made it from just good power to like super powered. But you needed that jeweler because you were just the blacksmith that was making the sword. And I always thought that was really cool, because you basically got into crafting guilds where you make the gem and I'll make the sword, and so that we can make epic sword. But then for epic jewelry, the miner or the blacksmith would make the ring setting that was important to put the gem in to make a more powerful ring. And EVE Online and Vanguard is the only time I've seen truly crafting industry guilds where that's all they did. They didn't even go out adventuring or PvPing or anything. They just made stuff for other people and enjoyed the rewards of all of that money that they were making. So I like the idea that like that in Final Fantasy, that you can create those social type of bonds by I don't have to do all the things because I can't do all the things, but it's more efficient for you to do this part and me to do this part, and we create something better together.
Yeah, and then on like in Final Fantasy, they may not have like a guild specifically for crafting, like you would have had in Vanguard. But there are things that you can create called link shells, which are kind of like how we did an episode on like social things in games that we use, and one of them we suggested was maybe to have a guild, but also have like this group chat with friends or people that may not be in your guild. Final Fantasy has that's called link shells, and one of the things you can do is specifically crafting, and you can join that link shell because they have 700 people you can join in that link shell, which is plenty of people. I feel that's a good number. They're looking at increasing it because they do cap out quickly if they're popular. So and people do that. That's how they trade, and people said like, hey, listen, that's one of the ways they use trading. So you may not see them chat in the trade chat. They'll use link shells because there's actually specific link shells that you can search for and use. Yeah, I got it right.
Sog mentions the one thing that I hate about guilds need to be more than just chat rooms, and they need to be more than just chat rooms with storage applied to them. Because they have, and it's difficult, like in combat and when it comes to like those type of activities that we talked about in our first episode, it's really easy to be like, hey, you know what, we are a guild working on these achievements and we can't do it by ourselves, so we're coming together and we're bonding together in fellowship to go conquer this dragon, But when you take out the combat part, it really becomes even more difficult to like why are we coming together and working on this thing? Um, I'm gonna skip because it makes a good jumping off point into one of the things that we had talked about, which makes social gameplay interesting, and that is the idea of claimed territory. And EVE Online, and I'll turn it over to Han so he can explain just how deep their claimed territory goes. But I also know that Pathfinder, the Pathfinder MMO that they were coming up with, also was trying to work on a system of claimed territory where you and your group of people could go out there and claim, stake your claim in the world and build a castle. And it would require a huge group effort to build and maintain a castle. So Hans, you want to how difficult is it to get a what do they call it, a POS, a player-owned station, out into EVE?
Well, to actually place a station in EVE is well, not a. I guess there's a couple of different kinds of things. There's player owned, what they call star bases, which are these little kind of outposts that you can stick around moons. They're relatively cheap, and most players can get into them in their first few months or so of they're not the most but significant presence in the world, but you can post little outposts around moons and such throughout all areas of space. The EVE universe is basically divided into 3 rings. There's the inner ring, which is called high security. There's a middle ring called low security, and an outer ring called zero or no. They call it null security, or null sec, and in the very inner ring, where it's considered high security, the game works the way a lot of MMOs work, where you can kill somebody of an opposite faction, or you can kill anybody anywhere in EVE, but there's going to be like a bouncer type system where NPCs will come kill you, and so they respond quickly enough that it keeps foul play to a fair minimum, and so that's one area where people can move around and play the game, but there's not really any ownership of anything in that inner ring in high security space. It's all NPC driven. The NPC factions control certain borders, and outside of CCP changing the story, that doesn't ever change. Low security is a different case. There's some areas of kind of pirate-owned space are kind of like NPC space, and then there's a faction warfare zone, and faction warfare is what I was always involved with in EVE throughout my career. That's kind of the faction that I represented as a political representative when I ran for the CSM. I was bringing knowledge of the faction warfare system to the table because I felt that system needed to be fixed. But that's an area where there are 4 NPC factions, the Galente, the Amar, the Minmatar, and the Kaldari, that are kind of the 4 main races that the story is built around. And though that territory is fluid, and that the systems in those areas can be pushed and pulled between the NPC factions. So it's kind of like, Alliance versus Horde in WoW, or other kind of games like that. But so those boundaries move back and forth, but so the players affect them, but they don't necessarily own them. To own them, you got to go out to nullsec, and that's one of the largest areas of the game, is the collective nullsec space. But that nobody owns except for the players that actually put up. And in that area, they do put up their own stations. They put up sovereignty units, which are these giant structures with shields that are basically like a sort of rules mechanics flag for that area of space. And so the map out there is completely affected by the wars that the players take on, and what kind of alliances they build, and that whole thing. I hope that covers it.
It is. And I'm looking for a video. There was a time lapse video where you could see the nullsec space on a YouTube video, and it showed how different alliances would take over or lose their ground in nullsec. And when I find that, I'll try and play it.
And nullsec has its problems too. Because it's very experimental and it's very open. It's always had issues at various points in time mechanically where some of the actual mechanics of changing sovereignty over from one alliance to another is often more tedious than the fun that the battle. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but the mechanics of having to bring out all of these expensive ships and just stand and shoot at a thing, almost like mining for hours and hours and hours and hours. Just to shut something down, to switch a flag over. What you often get are all of these backroom deals where people on paper own spaces, but they don't actually bring their ships out to fight over them because the mechanics aren't actually fun. They're just tedious. And so this is something that CCP has constantly rehashed year after year after year to try to find that sweet spot. And I don't know that they're there yet. They're in the process of another big overhaul as we speak. But this has been kind of an ongoing problem, is that is how do you make mechanics that are not incredibly easy to flip hands between players, but aren't so tedious that you get players that basically form a almost role play control over who owns what region, and only actually bring their ships out if there's a dispute over that, rather than actually trying to go through the work of changing the flags in game. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, Guild Wars 2 is going through the same sort of working through the bugs with their system, because they wanted their world versus world where your guild could take over a castle and your guild could claim a castle, but because the pace of their combat is just so fast that your guild might have a castle for like an hour or two. And then, the moment that you log off and that people realize that it's undefended, they can take it just quickly. And that doesn't make it seem like a guild war. They wanted the idea that if your guild was capturing a castle to be meaningful, that it did have meaning, and then it had a level of depth that you could upgrade it and have a sophisticated system in place, so that it was more than just the combat involved, that there was the logistics of supporting castles and that sort of thing. And then, I really wish that I had gotten more into Pathfinder, because they had a system that they wanted to design, which was basically like EVE Online in a fantasy world, where you just anywhere out in the world that you wanted to, you could go and start building your own controlled space. But I haven't been able to find out news on where they're at with that system, or how long they are away from completing it. And Flatus Kyles, correct me if I'm wrong, think of any other MMOs where there's claim space. I know that there are guild halls, but I really have a difficult time considering those claim territory, because you're either sharing that space with every other guild through an instance controlled portal where the developers can spool up as many of these spaces as they need to. What do you think? Oh, and then the decoration part of it, I wanted to make part of it, because that's part of basically claiming your territory.
Yeah. Well, once you threw in that caveat of the portal, Final Fantasy 14 was out of the question at that point.
Right, but can you create your own guild space or fellowship space, whatever they call it in Final Fantasy? Can you does it make it a more social experience? I'm trying to think of an example. If you wanted to drive your guild more into a crafting focus, is there something about that guild hall that would allow you to do that? And I think that I saw.
Why yes, there is. With the expansion, they added a lower level to what are called a crafting hall or basement in the guild houses, where the crafters, when it initially launched, what the idea was that all the crafters in the guild could work together to create the free company airship, because they added flight in the new expansion Heavensward for Final Fantasy 14. Now, you could have, I think it was up to 4 of these airships. So people were working together. So you'll get one to max, and you'll take the parts of the old one, and you'll have to create all the stuff and keep leveling. And you get to name them all, and you send them out, and they go out and explore the world. What the crafters were doing was working completely together. And if somebody leveled, the more crafters you had that were leveled, the faster you got those airships out, and that was better, because the more those airships explore the world, what's coming in patch 3.1 is the ability for all the free companies now to hop on those airships, and they're going to go to these floating islands, and there's going to be these, and I know it's not going to make a whole lot of sense to people that played Final Fantasy, there's hunts, and the lowest level difficulty monster is considered an A rank, which is the highest level difficulty hunt monster, and then higher than that. So where Sagawa said in chat, it's like, well, guilds, and we kind of mentioned, they're kind of just like glorified chat rooms. Not anymore. Not, well, at least not in Final Fantasy, because they're giving, the only way you can access is rather you come by free company, you get invited with a free company if you're just not part of their guild. Like, hey, listen, I want to go up there. You can throw us some gold, or if you're a crafter, or like if you want to try somebody out for raiding, that would be a perfect place, because those monsters up there won't hurt your raid run, and they're tough, and they're open world monsters, and you have a random loot roll in there.
Right, and I wish that Luci or Chueno was still here, because that I would ask them. But EverQuest 2, you could hire your own NPCs to vendor your wares in your house, and so that claimed territory that you could have in the world actually was meaningful, because you could basically make a living or make your crafted profession more worthwhile by getting the NPCs, hire them, and selling things out of your in-game house. And I thought that that was a pretty cool thing, and that's one of the things that we were hoping to see in Landmark. But
you can hire people in Final Fantasy. And I know that they can sell things for you. I just don't know how much to actually do, because I haven't played around with it a whole lot.
It's called they're called retainers.
Yes!
and they can.
I have a really cute one. He's like the part dragon guy.
But yes, you can do that in EverQuest as well. From what I remember getting tours and people showing me, and me being in a guild house, there are people you can NPCs you can hire that repair, sell things, and do things within the guilds as well.
All right. So one of the other social parts of gameplay that I wanted to talk about was the idea of exploration. That you don't actually have to go out there and kill, maim, destroy, or anything like that, sack the orc village, that you could just go out there and explore, like, what's over that hill, what's down this river, what's across this desert, like those type of exploration. I remember in my first MMO experience that was one of the things that I really looked forward to the most, is that all of a sudden we'd come across this cave. We had no idea what was in this cave, because there was no wiki guides to it. There was just like, here's a cave entrance. Do we want to go down it? And we would go out and do that. Since, in the last 10 years, with the explosion of YouTube videos that are doing walkthroughs and watch me play type stuff, I kind of wonder if that type of exploration is on the way out, and we gonna throw it out there. Is procedurally generated content the only way to go from here forward?
Maybe.
Because I don't know. I honestly do not have the answer for this question. I'm just throwing it out there, because at what point, there's exploration in every MMO, because even in Warcraft, if you've ran across the same area like 10 or 15 or 20 times, that 21st time that you run through it, you might be like, wait a minute, I never noticed this before. What's over here? Hey, I've run by this building like 10 or 15 times. I've never actually stopped to go check out and see what's in the building.
That happens, and I like when that happens. I like when you take a second to, you see something and you're like, I've never been in there. I'm gonna go in there, and all of a sudden you come running out. There's a lot of bad things in there. A lot of scary things.
We talked about it on the show, or just during a pre-show once, about the in Warcraft in the Goldshire village. There's the 4 human children that if you follow them around, they eventually go, there's 5 of them and they go upstairs and it's like they're doing a summoning ritual.
For Yogg Sharon. Yeah, they go up there, they do the summoning ritual for Yogg Sharon. They stand at the points of a pentagram, just in case somebody knows. It happens every single day at 7:47 a.m. You can go there, go upstairs, and you will hear these children chant, and you'll hear Yogg Sharon going, "You shall die. Death is incoming." And I'm like, what is this happening? I need a young priest and an old priest.
Yeah, and I was playing Guild Wars 2 a little bit, and of course exploration is a big part of Guild Wars 2, especially when it comes to jumping puzzles. And I feel like it's such a temptation and it's such a crutch that anytime I feel like I'm having problems with exploring, I can just go right over to Google and type it in and it'll tell me how to find it.
I hate jumping puzzles.
Me too.
They can burn the fiery fuckings of hell. I hate them.
Oh, I hate the ones in. No offense to Guild Wars 2, but your jumping puzzles. First of all, it's not so much the puzzle part that's hard. I know I can see the path pretty clearly. I understand. Like my brain works better than your Guild Wars jumping puzzles. You know what? Your fucking jumping mechanics suck. That's what the problem is. They suck. They're terrible. You fall off for no reason, and I blame the game and I blame the damn jumping mechanics.
It's just a feel bad sort of setup. Like it would be like it's almost like takes you out of it too when you don't have to do when that kind of dexterity isn't needed for most combat situations or the rest of the gameplay. To suddenly have to do that to get some treasure chest, it's almost like if you had to stop and like do a little like DDR red blue green to the beat sort of mini game. It would feel that out of place because that's not the kind of game that it is. And so to just put it in there to get to something, it does feel cheap.
Not gonna lie, that bug got me in WildStar when it first came out because they had a DDR machine in the city, and if you played that little mini game, it locked your character up. So every time you did one of the events, my character would stand in place and lock up, and I couldn't do anything.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it was a terrible bug, and it happened every time you fight a boss. Also, someone would like activate a thing in the area, and all of a sudden I would just lock up in the middle of fight, and I was a tank.
Yeah, talking about Guild Wars 2 jumping puzzles, one of the most ridiculous things that I ever saw is that they put a jumping puzzle inside one of the World versus World zones, and it had traps, and it had traps that the players could control. So I was talking with the people that ran through it, like when the first game first came out, and they had no idea as they were jumping through the traps that were knocking them off of pillars and cliffs and stuff like that. It was because somebody else was like activating the trap and actively pushing them off and causing them to fail. And I thought that at one hand, it just seems like bad design. It's troll design. It's like, how can we like... there's no way for you to know if you're just running into this for the first time. There's no way for you to know that somebody else is controlling it because you might think that it's a timing issue and be spending an hour. But had you known it was somebody else controlling it, you'd have been like, peace, I can find something else to do. So, and then Hans, I don't want to leave you out. That wormhole exploration in Eve.
Oh, yes.
That's procedurally generated, right?
Yes and no. So the way wormhole space works is there are a finite number of wormhole systems. They're all numbered with like an alphanumeric, AN dash blah 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 blah. But what's procedurally generated are the actual inputs and outputs to get in and out of the wormhole systems, and all of there's always like a point where you have to warp to that point, click on the thing, and actually go through the wormhole to pop into the other system. It's like a gate almost. And so because those randomly open and close to each other wormholes and also to known space, once you go in, there's always a possibility that the wormhole could collapse behind you, and so you have to have somebody, either something on your ship that can scan its way out, or you have to have people in your party that can scan their way out, because these things are unstable, and they close after a certain amount of ships have passed through, or a certain amount of ship mass. What
happens when the gate closes and you're on the other side? Do you have to wait for it to open spontaneously on the other side?
Well, there will be other wormholes in that system that will go to other places, but you don't have any control over where those other places are. And so you would have to jump to a system, scan out each of the wormholes in that system, all the entrances and exits, and kind of know where those go. And sometimes they go to even more unknown space, and you have to sort of jump in, see what it is, jump back through if you don't want to be there. And so there's a whole methodology to even going into wormhole space, either temporarily to because sometimes you can go on the way I liken wormhole space is like going camping in the woods. You can either go in there on a day hike if you want to just kind of poke your head in a system, find some maybe you find some NPCs in there that are really tough that have some awesome loot, and so you want to go run that content, get the loot, and get out. You can usually do that pretty safely and get back to where you came in, to where where you came in. But other times people will go 2 or 3 wormholes deep and just kind of leaving almost like breadcrumb cans behind themselves to kind of, or taking various careful on paper notes to find their way back out. But it's always risky. And the other risk is that other players can easily get in and kind of block off your exits behind you. And it's quite dangerous because of the player hazard whenever you go into wormhole space. You don't see other people on your scanners the same way. And so you have to rely on directional scanners rather than this sort of global ship ID list. And so it gets really dicey. It's very fun and it's very lucrative, but it's a very high risk activity. But there's always different stuff whenever you pop in. You don't know when you scan down a wormhole where that wormhole is going to go, who's already going to be living in there, because that's a whole other thing. Is people have started to live inside wormholes where they set up star bases, and when you live inside of a wormhole, the entrances and exits change all around you. You might be the constant presence in there, but and people will be coming and going through your space from all different directions. And so you have to have a strong enough force of people living there to be able to defend yourself if you get a hostile band that comes through.
You can't just camp the gate, right?
You might have scouts near the entrances and exits that it might be their job is to be patrolling those areas to make sure that things are safe, while the rest of your corporation is mining or running NPC con or doing whatever the lucrative activity there is to do in the wormhole. But there are whole civilizations now of people that live inside wormhole space, but it takes a different kind of skill. You have to know how to use probes really well, which is its own kind of specialized sub-activity in the game. You have to know how to be safe using cloaks and using your ship scanner in order to be constantly aware of who's around you and make sure that you don't get surprise attacked. So it's not procedurally generated in that the actual systems themselves always are the same, but the map, the way in and out is always changing, and then the player hazard is always changing. And so the effect is almost procedurally generated in that going with a few friends, even in some cloaky safe ships, going and exploring a wormhole is going to have really unpredictable results from day to day.
And again, that sounds incredibly intense, and that's one of the things I love about the sci-fi genre is that whole idea of exploration through wormholes and seeing what's on the other side. It's just too bad that Eve it's still only humans, right? There's the 4 different factions that you can play are just different factions of humans, correct?
There are no aliens in Eve. Yes, there are alien-like beings that are these people called the Jove and the Sleepers, but they have to do with really complex AIs and being plugged into computers and a lot of genetic engineering. But all of the lore in Eve has to do with humans transplanted in the future rather than aliens.
That's too bad. All right, and then the last part of what we had to talk about is the social side. The social side of gaming is diplomacy, and that is not the Vanguard card game. For once, I'm not talking about Vanguard diplomacy at all. Were you unmuted when you said that?
I just edited myself. That's all.
Right. Okay. I'll talk about a little bit about Guild Wars 2 diplomacy because they talk about like the different levels of how your group functions, right? And then there's the tactics that they use, but the tactics are used to achieve the strategy that you've implemented. And part of that strategy involves talking with people that aren't your people, that are, you all share the same server or you share the same space, but you might have to talk to another group that does things differently than that you do to come up with like, how do we work together to come out with a common good? Like we both benefit from it. You know, that's my roundabout way of defining what diplomacy is. I could have probably looked it up and it would have been more concise. But the reasons for it in a game environment have to do with completely different things. You know, in like I was saying in Guild Wars 2, you might be like, hey, this group of people, this guild, they're going to this borderlands and they're doing these things. And this other group is going to a different one, because if we all go to the same borderland, sure, we'll dominate that one borderland, but then our other borderland is completely undefended and we don't win. Who was it that mentioned the Terra political system?
His
Hey,
me.
hey Flatus, what is that? I didn't realize that Terra had a political system.
It does have a political system. Once you reach level 50. Once you reach level 50.
He said once you reach level 50, I
I totally didn't understand that. I thought he was speaking the Swedish shop.
No, Kyla speaks native Flatus. Once you reach level 50, you can run. Alright, well, you can have the honor of becoming a Vanarch and running the Providence on behalf of the Valkion? Something? I don't play a whole lot of Terra, so if I get some things wrong, please forgive me. But the political system is an alliance of what is like 7 races? Yeah, there's 7 races. It's like the ultimate accolade, and then you can do things in games. You can set. You're responsible for setting and collecting taxes from everybody and and shops. So everybody has to participate. Also, the Vanarchs choose special shops that go into the towns, and skill trainers and settlements. Like they pick things that happen in the game. So like, if you're not like, let's say if somebody like just like, all right, man, it's all just like shield shops and like metal, like no cloth people, or like he can do that if he wanted to. So you can open up new teleport routes. Like he affects a lot of the game, and it can bolster the economy or change. And he can run for another term in office. So it's kind of like it's a whole political system.
And now and then I'm going to bring up Final Fantasy just once, and I know that there are different factions that you choose to be a part of that actually is there any diplomacy that goes on between those factions, or are those completely like background mechanics to the gameplay?
I mean, yes, because you have to run for Vanarch. So it is the political. So there is like background to the gameplay. Yeah, I guess there is.
No, I mean, I'm talking about in Final Fantasy the
that one. No.
Yeah, what those factions that you have to choose to be part of.
Oh,
for your personal Grand Company.
That one. Yeah, there you go. I thought you were still talking about Terra. Excuse me. Yes, the Grand Companies.
Sorry, no.
In Eorzea, the Grand Companies are technically, even though there's 3 separate factions, that they're open to each other. Like there's no political like. If I'm higher with one faction, I'm not hated by the others because they work together.
Yeah, I told him it wasn't a seesaw.
It's not a seesaw. Now, and you could switch sides. And now the only time it becomes not seesaw, but the only time it really comes into play is PvP. The battlegrounds, the adders, the maelstrom, and I forget the other one because they're not important.
But right, because there's no diplomacy that goes on between them. There's no reason to. All right. And then there's before we get to Eve, because of course Eve has wonderful player-driven diplomacy. But I wanted to bring up: does Crowfall have any diplomacy? Because I remembered reading something about being able to hold grounds and build castles, or maybe I'm mistaking that with another game. Because I know that Crowfall is going to have different campaigns that are all part of the world, and the size of the world and the length of the campaign all are varied depending on which one you want to be part of. Where you can get into that whole inner guild diplomacy, where you're saying like, hey, this other guild that I know that I am friends with, but I am not part of, like, hey, we're going to jump in on this campaign. And we would like you to come in on with us, and you support, like, you're Oceanic and we're North American, so you run it during our off time and we'll run it during our, blah, that sort of thing. My voice is starting to go.
Oh no.
So Hans, Eve diplomacy. Just everybody has read the horror stories about what you can get away with doing in Eve.
Oh, certainly.
How much backstabbing have you done?
Have I personally done? I'm not much of a backstabber. I've actually got to the level of success that I did by being relatively trustworthy, all things considered. But that to me was kind of the fun one, was being like the straight-laced guy in a world that where you couldn't trust a lot of people. I don't think I would have been able to get to the point where I was elected to CPM if it wasn't a person that was really consistent with what I said publicly, with what I was actually doing in game and such. But the game itself is obviously like rife with political intrigue. Diplomacy in Eve kind of falls into two categories, in my opinion. Like, you've got the sort of diplomacy that dictates the protection level for your corp. So on every single corporation in Eve is kind of like a guild in another game. Every corporation has to have an idea of where it fits in the food chain of all of the other social entities that are in its area, because you have to sort of know who's hostile, who's not, who are your threats, who's going to come after you, what safety level of space you're going to inhabit with your group. And depending on what safety level, you need to be able to form appropriate or relationships with the groups around you to sort of balance your protection level with the amount of content that you have, which is kind of the other half of diplomacy. And so you've got this weird dynamic where you want to be able to convince other people around you that have similar goals or play style interests, or people that you'll get along with, that you want to be friends with them. But if you make too many friends in Eve, you quickly run out of people to fly around and shoot at the same time. And so you don't want to be completely on great, if everybody in Eve was on great terms with everybody around them, there'd be nothing to do. There'd be no conflict. And so, there becomes this pendulum often with people's relationships between corporations. There's lots of fights that start overnight and cause big splits, but often groups will realize that if they work together, they might be able to provide their groups with a lot more content by taking on a bigger alliance. And so that's where the diplomats come in. And this is what I did before I was elected to the CPM. I was a leader of my corporation, but I was one of the diplomats for my alliance. And this is a lot of my job, was when a dispute happened, like let's say one of our pilots went and shot another pilot in an asteroid belt for fun. But it's a group that we were trying to form a relationship with, or add to our alliance or something like that. Then you'd need diplomats to step in and sort out the dispute and go, okay, look, this guy didn't realize this was going on, or we didn't, you're there to sort of smooth things out if your goal is to keep that relationship going and keep things on the level. Or sometimes, you're there to stir things up too, or to, assert your authority in a region. So it's the diplomats have this weird job of sometimes you're smoothing things out and building relationships. Sometimes you're there to like maintain the balance, sort of, so that there's a level of content for your players too. And that's a lot of what I did.
Awesome. I just have one question.
Oh,
has there ever been like a supreme day of East and Eve, like just like one day where everyone was like, all right, peace day? Like never?
No.
Like never, like has anybody ever suggested it like on the forums, like, hey guys, how come we never have like a one day out of the year where we just like celebrate peace with each other?
No, what everyone that plays Eve wants is the opposite. They want there to be a day where you get
everyone goes to war,
where you get all of your stuff back that you lost that day back the next day, like a one day like apocalypse where basically everybody could undock with everything and blow everything up without because in Eve if you lose all your stuff, you're not going to be able to play the game for the next few weeks until you go out and make a bunch of money. Like you have to always balance your spending with, the ships that you lose with your ability to go and earn more money. And so that's what everyone wants, is like a doomsday reset day where they could just go total war without any financial consequences.
I'd be willing to play that day.
But the developers have never granted this. They're very adamant on a static, a static realism to it.
I can understand one of the reasons is because there have been two huge battles that I've watched in Eve, and the amount they have a mechanic called time dilation where they basically slow everything down, and I can't imagine with the amount of people joining into the battle that they could get when there was no consequences for the battle. It would just go crazy. They would melt their server.
No.
Yep, probably so.
And then the other thing is the closest they've gotten to like an international day of war. It was almost, there was a battle, and then almost a year to the day in another part of the galaxy there was another huge battle, and I forget the name of them.
Probably involved a Titan being lost. That's usually where all
it was like three
the attention gets. Yeah.
Because like I said, I don't actually play the game. I find most of the gameplay in EVE Online fascinating. And I follow a lot of EVE Online Twitter, different things. And whenever they tweet out that there is a huge battle going on and someone is streaming it to Twitch, I'll log in and watch it.
And I think that's awesome. I think that's totally acceptable and awesome. And I think that's one of the great things about EVE. Like I don't see that as like a detriment. Like I see that as one of the accomplishments of a game like EVE. Like it's you can't have everything you want in every type of game. There's always has to be compromises and choices. And EVE has firmly sat in that one place on that one end of the spectrum. But the stories that it creates are really cool, and I'm glad that there are people that enjoy that, even if they don't enjoy the game. That makes me really happy.
Yeah, and then there was a couple of ATM scams going on where it was basically you deposited your money into a player-run banking system, and you were supposed to get interest on your money.
Oh, that's a classic one. That kind of stuff still happens all the time. No one should ever give their money to anybody ever in EVE. But yeah, it's totally allowed. You can tell anybody anything you want and ask for their money, and if they give them to you and you don't give it back, tough. That's the developer doesn't care about that sort of thing. They encourage that kind of scumbaggery. So
that's awful.
Oh, it's completely awful.
Yeah, it's totally legit. I mean, that's and the way that they've done this is it's the lore of the universe. Like this is a morally bankrupt dystopian future that these are the fledgling scraps of humanity that are isolated and probably aren't ever going to get back to Earth, and they're eking out for their own survival. And so like the lore dictates that everyone is a scumbag, and so they let their players be scumbags, and that's just that's just the kind of game it is. And again, it's you sacrifice accessibility because some people don't want to play a game where you can get your stuff stolen and smashed and your toys taken away and broken, and and life
I
goes
don't
on.
want my toys taken away and broken.
Yeah. But that's for some people it's very fun, and that's why they like to play that kind of game. So
yeah, I totally love it. I love following along with it. I obviously, like, I'm showing a little bit of my knowledge that I knew about those 2 battles that took place in EVE. I knew about the huge ATM scams that went on in the game. When people post their stories about what they got away with, in EVE, I eat it up. The idea of logging into the game sometimes.
My unique challenge when I ran for the CPM was that because I was involved in faction warfare, I belonged to one faction, the Minmatar. That was my role play affiliation, my gameplay affiliation. Like, I had never actively flown against the Minmatar, so like people knew that was where my loyalty was because I always fought for them. But because I was in one faction, at the same time I was trying to run on a platform of, look, this entire faction warfare system in the game needs an overhaul. The developers need to work on this, and I'm the one that knows how we can fix this portion of the game. So to do that, I needed a voter base that involved voters from all 4 factions of faction warfare, even though the fact that they all hated each other in game. And so my job was to go around and make partnerships and friendships and relationships and build connections with corporation and alliance leaders from the people that I was actually at war with in game. I had to reach past that and connect with them on a personal level in order to say, look, you need to trust me that I'm the guy that can represent all of us and go to the developers. And there was a lot of distrust and a lot of hatred, and I got all kinds of terrible things said about me as a part of going throughout this. But at the end of the day, enough people trusted me and voted for me that I was able to secure the position on the CPM, and I did. I had a chance to work, and we did overhaul the faction warfare system, and a lot of things got improved, and there's a lot more people out there shooting and blowing each other up, and the mechanics are a lot more fun as a result. But along the way, I had to deal with sorting out all of this distrust and constant questioning. Even while I was working as the changes were being made, I got thrown all the same hate that you normally see players throw hate at developers when they don't like a change. I get stuck in the firing, position too, because here I am, the one that's their player representative. So that was the kind of strange, sort of unique case to me as a CPM representative. Is instead of just representing one alliance or one group, I had to sort of represent 4 groups that all hated each other, and yet still get them to support me enough to go on and get this ability to work with the company. That's where diplomacy took me in EVE. It sort of went out of the game and into the real world, and ended up being this real life opportunity as a result of what I was able to do in game. So it was pretty significant for me as a life event, not just as a game.
Never.
Oh, I am pressing the wrong button.
I was sitting there. The thing is, I literally thought I had hit a button because I had hit my keyboard on accident. I was like, shit, I hit a button.
I
started searching.
I thought I'd like freaked everyone out with my ramble or something.
No, and then Kyless made the face of like, I'm paying attention because she's right there, so assuming she's hearing you. But then I think she kind of realized, like, wait a minute, I don't hear him in my headphones. And then I was like, wait a minute, something is wrong. And then you're like,
that's the first time I pulled a Tamlin in a year or so, and I actually want to do a blog about it to show people how I have it set up.
I have the blog on how you pull Tamlins, and the first one is blank.
Well,
I want to note that is the first time you got him to flip off on camera, so you're all welcome.
So the question I was asking is, and I was going to ask Hans, and I'll turn it over as our final question to the other two hosts. That World of Warcraft is obviously the most famous with its two-way faction warfare. You've got the Horde and Alliance. EVE Online has a four-way faction warfare with the player versus player just going all over the place. And then games like Warhammer Online and Guild Wars 2 tries to split it up into three separate factions that are all fighting each other at the same time. Do you have a preference? Do you think it matters?
That's not how he worded it originally. He's like, do you prefer the two-way, the three-way, the four-way, or the multi-way?
Of course I agree.
And of course I like started laughing.
Are we still
and
talking
he's like,
about
get your
warfare
mind out of
here?
the gutter.
Or, yeah. I think what's most important is how much the war lets the players feel like they have agency over the universe. Like they need. I think
preaching to the choir.
Seeing that you're affecting the universe by taking over that space is what's significant, and that's a lot of what I was working on during the year I was a CPM was changing those mechanics so that because before it was completely arbitrary. There wasn't any rewards or punishments. It was purely a map designation when a faction warfare took over a region, and so nobody cared. And so we put all these mechanics in that affected the rewards and would lock you out of stations if you didn't own that space, and things that gave players real motivations to go to war over it. And that, I think, really got the interest level. I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that we had 4 factions versus WoW's 2. I think you can do the same with any number of factions in a game, as long as you give players enough ways to control and give that ownership meaning.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I think that's one of my biggest problems with the Legion expansion, or I expect that it's going to be my biggest problem with the Legion expansion, is that they're going to take away that agency for me to feel like I have any input on the world whatsoever. If they put me in contact with the opposing faction in a you can't do anything about it environment, I'm going to be like, well, why don't you just tell me all about how I'm going to play your game? Flatus Kailas?
I don't know, because my game doesn't do that. My old game did. I don't know. I kind of dig the open-ended that you're kind of at war with everybody. Let's say that if they did a Mad Max MMO, I would expect that to be in a Mad Max MMO, like the EVE universe in a Mad Max. Actually, I would play the shit out of that. Let me tell you something. If there was a post-apocalyptic car war type game, it's set in the desert in the middle of a...
Right after the show, you and I sit down and we'll start doing our first developer notes on how to make a post-apocalyptic player PvP type MMO.
No problem. Can we, as long as we can be in the desert and have those cool ass cars, I don't care.
I believe there is a Mad Max game that they just made that's an online game, but I don't know how good it's supposed to be.
It's good. It's GTA, not necessarily.
Got it. You want something bigger, deeper. Gotcha.
Yeah. If it happens, you know where it started.
We're quite a bit over our normal time. I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm going to turn it over to our last and final thoughts this weekend. And
I love how I don't get to answer the two-way question, three-way question.
I'm sorry.
How many ways do you like it, Kyla?
Just 2. I mean, I guess it depends on my mood, but most of the time, yeah, 2-way.
I see, and now I can't tell if she's being serious or not.
It's so. I don't really give a shit about factions. I'm gonna be honest. I don't give a shit. My favorite cities, Dalaran and Shatrath. Do you know why? Because my little friends, the little cutesy little alliance guys, they're not red.
So you can punt gnomes. Just say it.
No. I married you. I don't want to punt you.
Unless you're in Shatrath and you go Aldor. That's bullshit.
True. For true.
Yes, we are over. So are we saying our final farewells?
Yes, please. Or you can take over the show because my voice is just about
Sure, absolutely.
gone.
I got this. sit back, beautiful. I got this.
Did you just call my husband beautiful?
Everybody's pretty to me, lady.
I'm in a rush.
Hans at Hans Shot First. Thank you for coming on, of course, to EverCast.
Oh, thank you guys. Fun to sit around and talk about video games.
Oh, absolutely. That's what we do. That's what we do. We're here every Sunday. Thank you. You gave us, especially me and Kyles, who have very little insight on Eve, and anyone in our audience and anyone that listens. If you've not tried Eve, maybe this will give you kind of a little. Go check it out, or check up some YouTube videos. For Tanlin and Kyles, I am Flatus. Thank you all again for coming. Before we head out, I know I have to do the giveaway. I did not forget. I know my co-hosts were messaging me, and I was like, I'm not leaving this until I do the thing. So yes, I'm about to do it right now. So if you do want a beta invite, and this is a full, this will get you into closed beta for Gigantic. So if you're into MOBAs, I believe playing it, it's different. I don't want to ruin it for you, and I also can't really talk about it NDA. So I don't want to ruin it for you, but please, if you're interested in playing Gigantic and you haven't gotten into beta and you are signed up, now would be the time to start doing. Not that. That. So I'm going to give everybody in chat a second to do that, and everybody that enters, go ahead and start doing it now. And while you do that, I can go ahead and start doing this. Yes, yet again, why everyone goes and enters the raffle, I'm going to go ahead and one more time explain that, yes, we do not really ask you guys for, I don't sit here and panhandle Amazon or any, like, if you're a normal listener to our podcast, I don't come at you with any sort of company trying to shill them and giving you like a percentage discount and I get a kickback. We don't do that here. What I do ask of you guys...
No, we just flirt with you.
Yeah. I may hug you. If I ever stop me and see me in person, I may give you a high five, give you a hug, talk to me about the show. We can do that. But we do ask you that you do share out with us that we do a quality show here. We sometimes make you laugh, and we sometimes not make you laugh, but what we do, hopefully most of the time we just make you laugh. And remember, even though we do not talk about all things EverQuest Next, we are still, we'll always try to bring it back to that. And please continue to support us for doing this, because 2 years is a long time, and, you know, I've missed a lot of Game of Thrones. It's totally worth it, though. I'm gonna go check. Everyone should have entered at this point. Yeah, yes. Give it one more second. Just in case. But I'm so sorry. This is the PC version, not the. Oh well, I don't know. Hold on. Let me. I'm gonna give you the thing. It's gonna redeem the key. I don't know if you'll have an option to choose the console or PC at that point. You may have the option. It doesn't say in the email if this is solely for PC or console. I'm going to say it's for PC, but if you have the option, by all means, choose Xbox One if you have that. That's your flavor of choice. If not, it's gonna be for the PC. Still, not so bad. If you didn't enter the raffle because of that, please take a shot. It's 50-50. If not, you still get into the beta. So, and only legendary. Legendary. You may be the only person getting if nobody else goes in for it. Nobody.
It's a pretty game. While Flatus
It
has
is.
been talking, I put up a couple of characters.
It is very gorgeous. Like I said, it's got that Blizzard level of art and precision. Originally coming out, I kind of thought it was a Blizzard game until I looked that the company wasn't Blizzard. I thought Blizzard had announced the game, and I was like, "Where's this game coming out?" All right. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Now we got 2 people, so I'm gonna go ahead and run the raffle. It's gonna be 50-50 shot. So
It's
let's see.
50-50.
Yep. And 3, I'm gonna 3, 2, 1, and bada boom. It was legendary. It was still 50-50 with legendary still won. Legendary, I'll send you a message with all the information on what to do to claim that code. You know what, Bayou Bob, since you were the only other person that entered the raffle, I do have another code, and I will just message you, and you get a code anyway. Everybody wins here on EverCast. Everyone else that didn't enter, you don't win. I'm sorry. You won by listening to us tonight. And with that, I'm going to camp us out and see you guys next Sunday. Oh, what? And camping in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See you all next Sunday. Thank you and good night.